Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in once again to the Duval Dive. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game of Fans First Sports Network. And listen, your final Monday leading into the draft, Travis D. Holmes did his final mock draft. Well, guess what? Now it's my turn to do the same. And listen, I say often on this show that the reason why I have my personal champion, Travis D. Holmes, do what he does with me talking draft is because I'm a terrible scout. But you know what? Something in me felt like I should be comic relief and do one last mock draft here myself just to see where I can land. And frankly, for you guys to get your last shots in alongside with me as far as who you believe the Jags should draft on that fateful night. Now, this particular rendition, if you're looking at it here, and for our podcast listeners, I'll list it down. Cam Ward went first. Abdul Carter, number 2 to the Browns, which isn't out of the realm of possibility. I really think they'll get Shador, but let's say they don't. Travis Hunter then goes to New York at 3, while Armand Membu gets picked up by the New England Patriots. Now, everybody who's watched the last few mock drafts, of course, with our friends Locked On Jaguars, Tony Wiggins, as well as News 4 Jack's Jamal St. Cyr. Many thanks to both those guys for jumping in and for those renditions. I pounded the table for Armand Membu, but in this instance, it's going to be the big three. I think that a lot of the Duval are looking for are Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, Will Campbell, offensive tackle out of LSU, Ashton Ginty out of Boise State, and of course, the dark horse being Tet McMillan. I will not be picking Tet McMillan. Sorry, guys. That is not the direction I lead. And of course, by the way, as we do this draft on Pro Football Network's mock draft tool, I will not be conducting trades either. So with all that in mind, I wrote an article on Fans First Sports Network recently on why I think the Jags as a franchise aren't ready to draft Ashton Ginty to make sure he's propelled to greatness along with them. So I'm going to go with LSU offensive tackle Will Campbell. I listen, I don't have a problem with drafting defensive tackle top overall, but me, I'd rather have more of a nose tackle type guy, a guy that could take up space than I would a 3 technique guy. And you've heard me allude to that in the past. As we're going through the picks here, I'm seeing Malachi Starks just leave the board. A lot of the dudes that I would have picked that aren't defensive tackles are flying off the board. Walter Nolan is still on the board as we approach pick number 36 for my second round pick. And look at that. Walter Nolan of Ole Miss is still available. Mario Hampton out of North Carolina at running backs available. Donovan Izuraku of Boston College is on the board here. Tyleik Williams of Ohio State is also here as well. And since I mentioned that I'm looking for a nose tackle type guy at defensive tackle, it's hard for me to pass that up. Let me look at some of the options I have here, though. I have Xavier Watts at safety. I know that that's a need depending on who you ask. There's Mason Taylor, a lot of dudes here. I don't think there's considering the Gray Zables and dudes like that, that I had higher on my board are off the table here. I'm going to go ahead and go with defensive tackle Tyleik Williams, all Ohio State. So I got those non-sexy picks that Travis and I talk about the Jags needing, with Will Campbell off the board for tackle. I think he's going to challenge Anton Harrison and Walker Little for starting reps heading into camp. And the same with Williams at defensive tackle. I think he will fight his way to get his share of production at that position as well, at the very least, because he's a different style of player than a lot of the guys, and he can fit in other situations, especially with the Jags being among the worst in the NFL last year in third and short situations, giving a lot of short runs up. But now we're into the third round with the 70th overall pick. Some of the key names here. Again, two defensive tackles. Walter Nolan is still on the board, which I find kind of mind-boggling. Obviously, there was a run on wide receivers. If you look at my draft, 3 wide receivers, including Kyle Williams, Jaden Higgins, and Alec Io Manor of Washington State, Iowa State, and Stanford, respectively, are off the board. Quinshon Judkins just went 4 picks ahead, too. So what I'm left with here, I'm seeing Andrew Makuba out of Texas is what jumps out to me immediately. Jared Wilson of Georgia at center is fascinating. Jack Beck, wide receiver out of TCU, is also fascinating. I see Kevin Winston Jr. You know, because of the depth of the wide receiver position, I'm going to go with that. I know that the argument could be made for center here with Jared Wilson. You know, the scouting on him is that he does have a high upside in the NFL, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Andrew Makuba out of Texas to fill that safety need, because it's just an offer I can't refuse right now. Filling 3 needs with guys that could be immediate starters with your first 3 picks is absolutely huge. And as the 88th pick comes up, maybe I'll still be able to snag a pretty solid guy overall. Number 88 pick has come up here. And so this is what I think is interesting is we have Ozzie Trapillo of Boston College, an offensive tackle here. Barrett Carter at a linebacker out of Clemson. Chris Paul Jr., linebacker out of Ole Miss, as the top 3 best players available in this group. And I got to say, I'm not mad at it. If I was one of these tight end conspiracy theorists, I could claim Terrence Ferguson or Elijah Arroyo, Ferguson of Oregon, Arroyo of Miami. Those are interesting. DJ Giddens at running back, a guy who I'm very high on out of Kansas State, is a fascinating mention, but I think a position that's overlooked quite mightily on this Jacksonville squad as a need is the linebacker spot. And I'll put it this way. The Jags need somebody else other than Foye Oluokun because, simply put, Father Time is not on his side. And I love Foye as a personality. He's definitely, what's his word? He's definitely a force and a leader on this team, probably one of the most underrated players in the NFL, right? He at least needs somebody else to play alongside of him. You know, if he's not, you know, I'm not looking for a replacement because he was just given a big contract, but he does need a guy to play alongside of him. He does need a Robin, I think. And I don't know that the current linebacker core achieves that right now, right? We've all heard the questions of the various linebackers on this roster. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Barrett Carter out of Clemson. I might get some tomatoes thrown at me, but that's where I think I'm going to go overall and see how that works. He says that it's, you know, the scuttlebutt on Carter there is that he could be a good will linebacker, meaning he could work alongside of Foye. Maybe that could work out nicely. And who knows? Linebackers like that can help provide relief to the edge. I almost went edge at that pick, but, you know, as we approach pick number 107 here in the 4th round, maybe edge is the direction I go here at this portion of the draft that we're working on here as well. And there's a few guys here at edge. I think I'm going to wait one more round for that. I would like one, but there's some reaches here. I'm not going to go there. Running back Cam Scattaboo gets my attention. Tez Johnson, wide receiver out of Oregon, is certainly on my list here of guys to look over. Xavier Restrepo out of Miami at receiver could fulfill another need for me here. Would I be reaching for going Savion Williams here? I mean, for me, I think it's a guy who's a wide receiver of size. And considering the Jags don't know what they have yet with Gabe Davis, maybe Savion's a guy who eventually becomes a cheaper replacement for Gabe Davis, what with his contract situation being what it is and all of that. But I don't know that the guy that they're looking for to fill the receiver core, if they keep Gabe Davis, is Savion Williams. That could go either way. And I don't think Scattaboo's the pick here. I don't. I think there are other running backs on the board that are more complete if you're looking to avoid predictability, I think Scadaboo is a guy you're trying to avoid. Not that there's a lot of guys that can block well in pass protection in this draft, but yeah, I talked myself into it. Wide receiver, TCU, Savion Williams, the 107th pick here. Heading to the fourth round, or staying in the fourth round with the 126th pick. See if I can get my edge here that I'm looking for as I approach pick 126. And oh man, I missed out on Ohio State's guy, but this will be a pick me and Travis D. Holmes have in common. I don't know that we made it in the same place, but give me the edge rusher, Savion Jones out of LSU. It's not that I feel like Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker need an upgrade. Certainly they don't. They're arguably the best starters as a duo at their position, on the team, better than whatever pair of corners you come up with, better than the defensive tackle pairings you might get, better than the pair of safeties, better than any two linebackers you could come up with on a team. And that edge rush push right there is a big deal. I'm currently on pick 102 now in round 5. Yes, in round 5 for pick 142. And I find it interesting that Nebraska's Ty Robinson at defensive tackle is still on the board. I'm somewhat tempted to go there, and I could see a universe where the Jags would do that since they don't know what they have with Mason Smith yet. But I don't know that we're necessarily in that BPA only space. But by the same token, considering some of the better players or some of the other players available here, I'm not exactly averse to it. Also, Ty Robinson coming in is listed. Weight is at 288. That's a little small for me at the defensive tackle position. I'm just not quite there at this point. Also, it might be a little early to go for corners. I might wait till next round to do that. So let me check the running back situation. You know what? Dylan Sampson's on the board here. And the only reason I'm not going with him is pass protection and injury concerns. And the Jags don't need another small back, in my opinion. You're looking to either replace Tank, well, not just replace D'Ernest Johnson, but also Tank Bigsby is a dude rife for perhaps wrapping up his tenure here. I know he's that currently RJ Harvey is listed as a third down back, but let's see if he can get onto this roster and become the new Tank Bigsby. I know that pass protection isn't necessarily his strongest trait, but he's not bad at it. He could catch passes better than I think people give him credit. He was limited in the Gus Malzahn offense at UCF, which I personally witnessed as a member of the Black and Gold Banneret. So let me go ahead and get RJ Harvey with this pick here at running back. Oh, look, I picked him in round 5. I tried to tell you he would go in round. I know it's a mock. I'm just joking. But seriously, that's right about where I think RJ Harvey should go, is in the 5th round. Or I shouldn't say should go, but will go based on, what I think the sentiment for him is out there in the world, so to speak. So I think something worth mention here is as we approach pick 182, quarterback Quentin Ewers is still on the board. And depending on how you feel about Nick Mullins, if he's actually there at 182, I feel compelled to pick him. Now, don't worry. He went off the board before we got there, so that's off the table. But that's fascinating that he went that low. I always kind of thought he was slightly overrated, to say the least. But, hey, a day's in, this is somebody who was given all sorts of props, and now he got drafted in the 6th round. Yeah, by the Browns at 179. That's why they skipped on Shedeur. They wanted Quentin Ewers, folks. Anyways, joking aside. As I look here, I can't help but notice USC center Jonah Monheim in place there. I think that's very interesting. I might go there. I see Jake Majors of Texas on the board here as well at center. You're noticing a theme here as I'm looking at centers. And for me, this is something where, again, this isn't meant to be a super sexy draft. We're not looking to get guys that, make big splashes. Travis Hunter was taken off the board by the Giants, in my opinion. That was the extent of where I was willing to go with making a splash. No, I don't think Ashton Jeanty is the right pick here. Maybe if you draft Ashton Jeanty, you can make something out of him moving forward, but with the short life of running backs, is that really that smart? I can't exactly get behind it, and I'm happy to be told how wrong I am at a future juncture. But for now, go ahead and give me Jonah Monheim of USC at center for my 182nd pick. Now, again, I'm not thrilled that I haven't drafted a corner yet, but these things happen sometimes, and that's really the best answer I have right now as I approach pick 194. I'm not in a place where I'm going to try for an Upton Stout of Western Kentucky or a Jalen Smith of USC or a BJ Adams of UCF quite yet. So that's a fascinating piece to me from there. As I pick at 194, Jake Majors is still there. I find that interesting. I'm not going to make that pick because I've already addressed center. I'm seeing a lot of interesting players here. It's kind of hard for me to really focus in on something because I've addressed a lot of different positions that aren't corner, right? I got Will Campbell, offensive tackle, Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle, Andrew Makuba at safety, Barrett Carter at linebacker, Savion Williams at receiver. I have not repeated a position yet. There's a good chance I'll do that here. And I don't want to draft back-to-back centers. That seems kind of silly to me. Excuse me. I'm going to go, you know what? Considering his size, a game-breaking ability to score when he touches the ball. I know there are off-field concerns. You know what? I was thinking of Isaiah Bond. I'm not going to go there. I am going to go a different direction. And as you see, I'm stalling because I'm not really sure what the best move is here. I know it's probably kind of a reach to get Upton Stout here. Like I said, I feel like I can make that my final pick rather than at 194. But at this point, you know what? You can say I'm doing it just to just to say I drafted a corner, and you might be right, but I am going to do it here. I got Upton Stout, Western Kentucky at pick 194 as I head towards pick 221. Obviously, let me know in the comments what you think of my draft. If you think it's terrible, that's fine. I keep reminding y'all I'm terrible at this. So this is mostly for comic relief more than anything else, but also to hype up that I will be doing a live reaction to whatever the Jags do in the first round with, of course, my personal champion, Travis T. Holmes. The New York Giants stopped me being from an alleged homer getting Kobe Hudson at wide receiver out of UCF. But the remaining people here with pick 221, I have Taj Brooks still here at running back, Hunter Wohler out of Wisconsin at safety, Carson Vincent out of Alabama A&M at defensive tackle. I think that's all very interesting. Joshua Simon at tight end, who's a physically imposing tight end with a blend of size, athleticism, and receiving upside. I'll say this: like when I see this in a tight end, this is kind of what I think fits what Liam Cohen is looking for. But I'm not seeing enough notes on his blocking for me to think he's actually, the right guy. Cohen's going to get a guy who's a stout blocker, and I'm not sure that Joshua Simon is that. But I'm also hard pressed to say no to it. So yeah, you know what? This way I can give the Duval Devout the tight end they claim they should need. If the Jags go UDFA on the tight end spot, that wouldn't bother me. But in this particular case, the way this particular draft fell, I have a tight end for you guys. So that should get you to a pretty stellar space. So yeah, there you go. If you haven't yet check out my article on why I don't think the Jaguars as a franchise are ready to draft Ashton Jeanty at 5th overall. I think that's not a mistake because he's a bad player, but simply because part of the reason the Jags were a 4-win team last year was because the offensive line wasn't developed where they needed to be to take advantage of an Ashton Jeanty such that he was. So for those who aren't watching the video here and are listening on the pod, my final rundown for my final mock is at 5th overall, Will Campbell, offensive tackle, LSU. Number 36th overall in the second round there, Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle, Ohio State. My third round picks are 70 with Andrew Bakuba, the Texas safety, at 88. I got Barrett Carter, linebacker out of Clemson. Savion Williams at wide receiver at 107. Savion Jones, it's funny, 2 Savions, spelled differently, mind you, at edge rusher out of LSU. RJ Harvey at running back, UCF, 142 in the 5th round. Jonah Monheim, center out of USC at pick 182. Upton Stout at corner from Western Kentucky at 194. And 221, the final pick for the Jags, Joshua Simon at tight end. So that'll do it for my final mock draft. And this is the final 2025 mock draft on this channel that you'll come across. If you haven't checked out Travis's final mock draft Monday, make sure you do that. Also, on the podcast channel, you'll find Travis examining De'Ami Brown and what Brown can do for the Jags overall. So check that out. And also, the Fans First Sports Network did a contributor draft. We drafted, of course, for the Jacksonville Jaguars. See what we did there if you're interested in all of that. So, but with that in mind, the next time you'll hear from me is hopefully right after the Jags make their pick and do what they do in the first round of the draft. So, but for my friend Travis D. Holmes, who will be with me up Big Cat Country, this is Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings on the Fans First Sports Network, where, hey, as you're listening to this, I might be covering an Orlando Magic game. That's an option. So make sure you check out those writings on Fans First Sports Network, as well as my work with the Black and Gold Banneret covering UCF football and basketball and all other things UCF. Of course, check out the Night Shift podcast as well. Like and subscribe to the Night Shift YouTube channel as I continue to do my work covering UCF. I did a guest spot on the Sons of UCF channel, by the way. Make sure you check that out, the Around the Kingdom podcast. Look for me there with Trey Trilco doing that. That was a fun time. We talk about RJ Harvey and if he will go to the Jags. That was a very interesting discussion. And of course, my work here on the Duval Dive, bringing you stuff for the Jags and all of that. So until next time, my friends, class dismissed.